Welcome to the program. Our dear viewers would like to thank you for finding time to follow the proceedings of the program. Now, Zambia is a member state of the African Union and the United Nations and has human rights obligations at both regional and universal levels. Freedom of expression and association are constitutionally guaranteed in Zambia, but the government frequently restricts these rights in practice. Particularly as the country heads to the polls in August, Zambia continues to experience a further shrinking of civic spaces. A recent report by Amnesty International indicated that Zambia is at the brink of a human rights crisis ahead of the August tripartite elections. Now, today our discussion is themed freedom of speech, assembly, association in the run-up to the 2021 elections. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Ask Election TV series, an initiative brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action, ACA. I'm Patrick Soko, and my special guest on the program today is MAIKO ZULU, a Zambian reggae artist as well as human rights activist and a recognized International Labour Organization Child Ambassador to Zambia. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much, Comrade Soko, and good evening, viewers.
We appreciate that you could find time to be part of the program.
Thank you, I'm humbled.
Now, I think you've heard in my preamble, we are discussing a number of issues pertaining to freedom of speech, assembly, association, especially that the country will be holding general elections on the 12th of August. Now, as we get to discuss our topic of discussion, in your own understanding, what constitutes freedom of assembly and association?
Comrade Soko, the freedoms that are talked about in these laws, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, in a layman's language, they refer to the general freedoms, the general liberties that you have as a citizen. If, say, for example, I would like to have a meeting with you and a few colleagues, I have the freedom to do that. Those are my rights. If I want to say, lego basoko simunaoneke bwino, sutiano niyo ipayo, olo imo basoko ndimo pusa, that is my view. Okay? If I think, for example, a leader either in the church, or, for lack of a better example, if I think, a leader is foolish in my own perception, that is my feeling, that is my soul. I should be able to express that thought, as long as that thought does not injure the next person, as long as that thought is within the laws. For example, if we say government is mismanaging funds, those of us who say so do so within what we understand as our freedom, as our rights. So the freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to share information, all these are encompassed in these fundamental human rights. So in a democratic dispensation or in a normal society, people, citizens should be able to enjoy these freedoms without, first of all, thinking how many Land Cruisers are going to come at my house after I say this, without thinking, am I going to be shot by police if I go to be part of a gathering, for example, because assembly is within the rights of the of the citizens, So, but when you begin to see caution in in your day-to-day freedoms, for example, in your day-to-day assembly. You know, say if you have a church, Mr. Soko, you have police say come to, you know, intimidate you to say imwe smunga chite assemble pano, you know, where are your papers and things like that. Then, you know, you begin, a society begins to enjoy less and less freedoms. So in a nutshell, the freedoms that we enjoy, what we are doing here is all part of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly.
The Constitution of Zambia under Article 11 guarantees freedom of conscience, expression, assembly, movement and association, and of opinion, thoughts and conscience as well. Now, are the majority Zambians enjoying their rights, specifically the right to assembly as well as association, or express themselves?
I would be lying if I said the majority of Zambians enjoy these freedoms. Because first of all, we live in a society where as a citizen you cannot criticize government. Okay, immediately you criticize government, you are labeled. First of all, you are labeled as opposition, belonging to the opposition. You are labeled as you know, being funded, you know, by external forces. You know, you see figures flying to say this is how much these people are getting to say these things. You know, so it's very difficult to qualify to qualify if people are enjoying these freedoms, because most of the times that people say, for example, have asked to protest, because protest is part of these freedoms. Your right to protest, you know, it's part of, you know, because when you protest, you gather, you assemble, and you express, you know. So the views that you express are curtailed. So in our country, unfortunately, and in many other third world countries, there is these freedoms, you know, that are on paper. You know, when you look into the books, you know, you find all these are, you know, they are there. You know, we have ratified the laws, international laws and things like that. You know, but practicing them is something else. So you find that a certain section of society enjoys these freedoms, while the majority of citizens do not enjoy these freedoms.
Can you share examples where citizens' rights to association, expression, and assembly have been violated?
Many times. Many times. I belong to a group calling ourselves the Yellow Card Protesters. You know, so many times we've had permits rejected, you know, by authorities on flimsy ground, you know. And you can see that, you know, these are unwarranted for cancellations, for example, of events. You know, we've had people who've protested, colleagues, you know, like Pilato, Laura Miti, who have been arrested, and the late Bonwell, may his soul rest in peace, who have been arrested, you know, for asking why the country bought 42 fire trucks at $1 million each, when the same fire trucks could have been gotten for less. You see, so there is a lot of infringement of people's rights to express themselves, you know, and this is not just for citizens, even you colleagues in the media. Okay, you find that a lot of media houses that are excelling are media houses that are pro-government, you know, or that have an inclination to government. And these are media houses that will get government jobs, you know. These are media houses that will be favored, so to say. Begin to criticize government, you know, you will be seen, you will be labeled as opposition media, you know, your license may be revoked, you have threatening letters, You know, I think we've seen so many media houses being closed, you know, in the last few years because of not being pro-government.
But with the current limitations of freedom of expression, what implication does that have on the citizens?
When you limit citizens, it means when you limit citizens' expressions, you are limiting citizens' ideas. You are limiting citizens' concerns. Because, for example, this is an election time. And this is a time when you need to allow people to express themselves fully. You know, they need to analyze their candidates. You know, they need to analyze the political atmosphere. You know, they need to analyze institutions like the Electoral Commission of Zambia. You know, they need to analyze even the judiciary, because the judiciary plays an important role in the electoral process. So when you gag, you know, these expressions, you know, then you are not getting the true picture of what the people are feeling. So if the people are hungry and, you know, they see you as leaders, they will be smiling, you know. They will be smiling and waving because you've passed and thrown 1 or 2 t-shirts. You know, they will not express, you know, that desire to say, tell the leaders that this is what we are going through. I would like to see, for example, when these politicians go out to do their rallies, you know, for them to listen to diverse views of the people. You know, unfortunately, this is not the case. When you go to political rallies, you want to hear what pleases you. You know, so for me, say for example, I belong to a party that uses a blue t-shirt. You know, I cannot go in my blue t-shirt to a rally that is being, you know, organized by those that are in a green or brown t-shirt. That is the reality. I will be beaten. You see, there are all these, you know, what I call immature approaches to politics. You know, for me, I believe a rally, say for my party, if I own a party, is more important for the people that support you, for the people that don't support me, because those are the people that I must reach out to. You know, but if I stand, I use my young people, my youth, you know, to beat anybody who comes in your Mr. Soko's t-shirt, you know, then I'm giving a false picture, you know, to my popularity, you see, and this is what we have. We have leaders who have this false popularity, that yet when you go into people's homes, they are the most hated people, you know. When people watch them on television, they want to turn off the television set, you know, but they will not express that, you know, because of fear. You know, a lot of people fear for their jobs. You know, I can give you an example. Some of us who speak, you know, without fear have had, you know, some of our jobs curtailed, you know. Some of our colleagues have been barred, you know, from coming to perform with us, you know. But, you know, this is what the real picture is in a third world country like Zambia, which is supposed to be a democracy, but unfortunately is a democracy on paper.
Well, in case you are just joining us, you are watching the Ask Election TV series, an initiative that is brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action, ACA. Your host is I'm Patrick Soko, and I'm joined by MAIKO ZULU, whom we are unpacking various issues surrounding freedom of speech, assembly, association in the run-up to the elections. Later on, you'll be able to participate on the program by calling the numbers that have been put on your screens there. Now, going on with our discussion, how does the invasion of most media houses by the government affect the way information is being disseminated actually in Zambia?
Comrade Soko, that is a very good and timely question, because indeed there is invasion of media houses, like I alluded to earlier. So you see, what this brings is that first of all, it takes away, you know, the label of media being the fourth estate. Okay? The media is an integral part of every society, you know, and usually what media brings out is a true reflection of what is pertaining in society. You know, I don't think you guys go onto the streets at City Market and you tell people, kambani vaso, or valani vaso, okay, onekani manjala bafana imwe, tabwelo kopa. You know, when you go out in the streets, you are simply a camera, okay? You are just a photographer. What you bring us on television is what is out there. So when you begin to shut that out, you know, again, you are building a sand castle, because you're like living in a glass house now, you know, where you will not even see the stone that will break your house, because you are closed to reality. Media is supposed to be given the leeway to express themselves, and that is why we have been calling, you know, for the Freedom of Information Bill to be enacted, you know, and this has been sat on by successive authorities over the years. You know, it's difficult. You, the media, sometimes have opportunities to give citizens, you know, certain information, you know, that is vital, say in cases of corruption. You know, some of you media people may have this evidence, hard evidence, you know, but you will not bring it, you know, because you fear for your life, you know, you fear for your job, you fear for your small TV station, you know, you fear for your small radio station, you know. So gagging the media is totalitarian in a way, you know. These are things that happen in dictatorships or totalitarian regimes, you know, because you want your voice only to be heard. You know, media represents everybody's voice. So if you close the media out, you are simply saying we are not interested in listening to the citizens. You know, we want the citizens to listen to us instead. And that is why you see that there is a certain media, for example, state media, you know, they are not appreciated, you know, because they sing one song, they sing the same song, they sing a tuned hymn, you know. Without that hymn, you know, they will not survive, you know. So it's important that the media are given their rights to express themselves and to give the citizens the information.
Interesting. Now, but how can we, how does that affect the role of the media, especially in the development agenda of the country?
You become irrelevant as media houses, you know, because people would rather go on Facebook to check for news than listen to mainstream media. You know, you become irrelevant, you know, because people understand that, oh, these are, you know, praise singers. These, when they come from 1 minute to 20th minute of a 30-minute newscast, you know, it will be one person. It will be one party, you know. So the more media sings the political song, the more irrelevant they become to society, to general society.
But how can citizens ensure that laws that govern the media are upheld?
Citizens have a role in the sense that, you know, they are the governed, you know. Us citizens, we are the people that are governed. And, you know, we have a bigger role to champion the cause of our media, champion the cause of ourselves as citizens, to express ourselves, you know. So that is why it's important that activism begins from a citizen's point of view. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm one person who has been an activist most of my life, and I don't belong to any organization. You see, because I believe that even as a citizen, you know, I can play a role, you know, in enlightening somebody, you know, in sharing certain information, you know, with people that may not have it, you know, in sharing my funds, for example, if I'm an artist, you know, in sharing information, you know, critical information, not just about my music, you know, but about national development, you know. So we have a role to play, because ultimately, even people that are in the media, these are citizens, these are individuals that come from the same compounds, you know, where there is hunger, the same compounds where there is no running water. You know, these are the people, you know, that sometimes have to use a pot to iron their shirt, and you won't see because they are on TV, kuti wa chisila poto, because malaiti anaenda. You see?
Mm-hmm. Now, but now I know we have internet now. But what are some of the advantages that are or positive use of social media, especially in the expression of views and reinforcing the agenda for change as the country is approaching the election period?
Well, the internet, comrade, is a very powerful and useful tool for all of us, especially during this election time, and just generally when we are providing checks and balances, you know. The internet is a platform that has revolutionized the way in which information is sent and received, you know. When I was growing up, you know, the only station that we had was ZNBC, you know.
Yes.
So you couldn't be a musician, nobody would hear you if you were not on ZNBC. You had to go live, not live on Facebook. There was no internet, you know. There was no private radio stations, you know. There was no private television stations. And you can imagine that kind of situation where you are being fed a monologue, you know. You are just being fed government propaganda day in, day out, you know. That instills fear in citizens, that instills a lack of trust in leadership, you know. So the coming of social media, for me, it's a blessing, because, you know, again, it makes those propaganda mouthpieces become so irrelevant, you know, to a point where people now are demanding to say, why are we even paying tax? Why are we paying TV levy? Instead of this TV levy being shared amongst all TV stations, why is it going to one propaganda house which is not serving the interest of the people? You see? So media in itself, you know, it cannot be ruled out in the equation, you know. So that is just the situation.
Interesting. Now, but do you think young people are appreciating the relevance of social media at the moment, and are they aware of how to use it responsibly? Based on your assessment, because I know you've been able to experience both platforms. Yeah,
I mean, young people are learning, you know. A lot of young people, obviously, all of us are new to this internet thing, okay, but obviously there is more exploration from young people, you know. So sometimes young people may be careless with the way they use social media, but I'm glad to say that there is a cadre of young people that are beginning to use social media very, very positively, you know. I can call out names like Betha Chulu, a Chipata student, you know, who is championing issues of children, you know. These are young people who have used social media positively, you know, to an extent where they've made an impact on fellow young people. So it's very important that young people realize that they have this platform called social media, which they can either abuse or use, you know. Other young people today are living off social media. They are making money, you know. They are posting, you know, their business on social media. They are posting ideas on social media. So I think to a large extent, young people are realizing, you know, the importance of social media and also the importance of using social media positively.
Now, human rights in Zambia are addressed in the constitution. However, the country report on human rights practices in Zambia for 2012 by the United States Department of State noted that in general, government's human rights record remained poor. Activists are being arrested, journalists are being harassed, and media houses are closed. Now, how can citizens successfully manage to convey their opinions, convictions, and beliefs to meaningfully participate in democracy without fear or intimidation?
You know, it's unfortunate that when some of these reports come out, you know, some people try to rubbish them, to say, no, these things are not happening in Zambia. You know, so for me, I think everybody, you know, has a role to play in making sure that you see, it's difficult sometimes to analyze these things in a democratic dispensation that has inverted the commas, you know, because there's a lot of dynamics. So for me, I think the onus still lies on citizens. We can, for example, begin to form community alliances, for example, you know, where, you know, sometimes it doesn't need to be a whole group of you. You know, for me, Mr. Soko, what matters is that if I have information, you know, I relate to you, you know, that is a plus. You know, we've already disseminated that information twofold. You know, so people need to understand that this country belongs to them. You know, it does not, the leaders that you see are merely administrators. So everything else has to be at community level. So it's very important that within the communities, you know, we have, like I said, these alliances, these networks, you know, either through the church, through your clubs as young people, you know, through the farmers' clubs. You know, we need to find a way of raising sensitive issues within these, for example, if it's a farmers' club, you know, we need to ask ourselves, why is it that our seed, you know, cannot be exported to Australia, for example? You know, why is it that, you know, we have goats in Chibolia which are not finding their way to Saudi Arabia?
Exactly.
You see? Yes. So even within these day-to-day gatherings, we can find a way, you know, of bringing topical issues. And it's very, very important, because when you are discussing, for example, politics within the church, you discuss it in a certain manner. You know, it's not like those thugs that you fight each other, you know, in the streets and things like that. No, you will discuss with open minds, you know, you will discuss without fear. You know, so we need to create environments, you know, that will enable us to have a discussion. You know, because what is important is that we need to have a discussion around a lot of things that are on the table today. So the onus is on each and every citizen, you know, to assist one another in getting information, disseminating information, you know, and making sure that we understand, like I said, that nobody's doing you a favor, you know, by you demanding for information and getting it. Nobody's doing you a favor, for example, when they do a road for you. You know, nobody, it's not a favor. You know, that is you working in the end. That is your tax working. You know, so we can only understand these things once we begin to have a discussion.
We are discussing freedom of speech, assembly, and association in the run-up to the 2021 elections. In case you want to participate on the program, you can dial the number that is on your screens to engage Mr. MAIKO ZULU. is a reggae artist as well as a human rights activist, and we are discussing a number of issues that are pertaining to human rights issues. Now, during this year's campaign, we have also seen the rise in young people taking campaigns to social media. From your own point of view, will it affect or influence the choices of which candidate to vote for?
Comrade Soko, only a few months ago, some politicians, they disregarded social media. To say, I mean, this is a platform for children, this is where, the youths are, but believe me, today social media, in this general election that we'll be having on the 12th of August, social media is going to play a huge role, a bigger role than ever before, because this is where the discussion is. This is where people who do not have the opportunity, to come to your rally, Mr. Soko, my people who don't have an opportunity to come to your rally because they were beaten by your people. This is where they get, the true picture of who the two of us are.
Exactly.
So social media cannot be ignored. It's here, and it's here to stay. And in future, I see an entire election being won just on social media. Because now even our grandmothers, they have to my phones where there's like a Facebook, a WhatsApp, where there's mobile money. Technology now is advancing. Even our old people understand that, I have a bit of money on the phone, even if sometimes they don't know how to withdraw, and when they send us, we steal a bit, but it shows you that technological advancement is moving with time, and events cannot outrun technological advancement. So as a citizenry, I think we must just accept social media, that it's here to stay. And there are numbers on social media. There are voters on social media.
Interesting. Now, the police used intimidation to enforce COVID-19 restrictions, movement restrictions. What impact will this have to the general public in terms of abuses of security forces, including unlawful killings, torture and beatings, life-threatening prison conditions, especially in the build-up to the election? We've seen this, especially this and last year.
You see, we should not let the police service be reduced to a security guarding company for a particular party. And that is what we are doing. You see, when you see certain people having the audacity to go and beat up police officers at Lusaka Central Police Station and get away with it, then you must be worried, because first of all, policing itself is wide. Policing is not just about going to stop protesters, No, when the MAIKO ZULU, they want to protest, let's go and break their legs. That is our job. No, throw canisters at protesting university students, No, shoot people when they gather, shoot to kill, So these, we must begin to understand as a citizenry that the police is a service. That is why, in the one-party state era, the police was called Zambia Police Force, because it was all about enforcing, it was all about, there was no things like assault cases those days, So in the advent of human rights and democracy, the police was reformed. What reforms? You know, it was supposed to have been reformed into a service, you know, but what we are seeing, you know, is that the police is merely, has always been a tool for a party that is in power, which is very unfortunate, you know, because...
But why do you say so?
I mean, it's not a secret that, you know, issues like the Public Order Act, for example, you know, they become useful for people that have come into power. Those that are in opposition today, give them power. Tomorrow, they'll be the ones using the Public Order Act to infringe on the rights of others. You know, those that are there today have suffered before. Under the previous regime before them, you know, they used the Public Order Act on them. How many times did the MAIKO, for example, complain against the Public Order Act? You know, yet it is still here. You see, the Public Order Act will still be here after August 12th.
But those in the ruling have also argued that now that you are advancing the issue of the Public Order Act to say there was an opportunity under Bill 10 to actually work on the Public Order Act. Do you think that was also a good approach?
No. First of all, Bill 10 was a different animal. You know, anything that came with Bill 10 had the stench of Bill 10. You know, you cannot allow yourselves to get progressive clauses, for example, and lump them together with retrogressive clauses. They will be rejected. You see, they will be rejected. You know, so for me, the Public Order Act, you know, we've had time, even before Bill 10. How many times people called for the reforms in the public order? You know, so it's. For me, that argument does not hold water, really, because we've had time, and, you know, the Public Order Act in itself, you cannot just lump it, you know, with other bills and expect that, you know, people are just going to say yes because it's a good clause, you know. So for me, hiding in clauses that were lumped together with Bill 10, it does not hold water. It will never hold water. And you see, that is why Zambians rejected Bill 10. You know, not just activists, not just CSOs, you know, not just opposition, you know, but even people within, you know, the ruling establishment. They knew that Bill 10 was a sweet poison.
But how has the abuse of the Public Order Act affected freedom of expression, especially amongst the citizens?
Look, young people wanted to protest and bring out issues that were brought out in the Youth Charter. What happened? You see, police clamped down. You saw those Land Cruisers going around searching for bush protesters. You know, honestly, if young people want to carry a placard and, you know, express their views, should you call police on them? Should you break their legs? You know, should the leaders in authority threaten to break their legs? No, that is abuse. You know, if people go to gather, you know, whether they've gotten a permit or not, are you supposed to use live ammunition on people? All that is abuse. You see, that is abuse of the police. You know, so for me, there will never be justification in the way that, you know, the police have been abused. And believe me, these are professional people. And a lot of them are working under very difficult conditions because, you know, as a police officer, you work under hierarchy. You know, so there are certain things that an individual police officer cannot bring out because of the manner in which they are trained. So It's us, you know, the general citizenry, that are supposed to speak on behalf of these police officers. It's us that are supposed to protect our police officers. It's us that are supposed to make sure that these public institutions are not abused, you know, by people in authority. Because, like I said, I mean, a higher AMCO, if you want, you know, security, yes, because that Zambia police is like AMCO for the whole country, you know. So when you remove, you know, when you begin to create a precedent where certain people are favored, or certain sections, certain groupings are favored by police, then justice is denied ultimately.
But what needs to be done to correct this wrong?
What needs to be done, I think, first of all, we need, we have an opportunity as a people, you know. If we want, you know, we need to vote for people, the right people in the right places. That is the beginning. Once we do that, we need to advocate. You know, advocacy must be our day-to-day song. You know, because in as much, you know, as we can vote for Comrade Soko in office, you know, what is more important is not just for us to vote Comrade Soko into office, but to analyze and assist in what, in the way that Comrade Soko is running the particular office that we've given him responsibility for. You know, so governance at every level is the responsibility of every citizen. You know, you cannot sit quiet when Financial Intelligence Center says so many billions have been lost due to corruption. You know, you need to begin to ask questions. You know, who was in charge of this money? You know, are they civilians? Are they in government? You know, what has been done? You know, have they been prosecuted? You know, where are the cases? You know, did they go through the right procedure? How were they acquitted? You know, you can't have so many acquittals, you know, at ACC when people are dying from expired drugs, for example. You know, when people are sick, you know, from using damaged condoms, you know. So issues of checks and balances are the citizens' priority. The foundation of checks and balances must come from the citizen, the general citizen. Not even, you know, people like, for example, because people always expect that, oh, when MAIKO speaks, I'll also make a comment to say, we are behind you, we are behind you. Or when he's arrested, you know, I'll post on Facebook to say, I'm behind you. No. You know, you need to begin to write letters to your parliamentarians once they're elected into office, to your council secretaries, you know, to your head of state. You know, you need to begin to ask questions because, like I said, Zambia is for all of us.
We also saw early this year in June where we saw doctors being arrested and fired for demanding better conditions of services. Now, what effect does that have on the workforce in Zambia, looking at the fact that there are a huge number of unemployed, educated young people?
Comrade Soko, first of all, when in a society where doctors do a go slow, it tells you that there's a lot of things that are wrong, you know, because some of these people, we are not even supposed to know them. You know, we are not even supposed to know that there is a resident doctors association, you know, because they should be busy, you know, treating people, you know, but we're in a situation where leaders have rubbished professionals, and that is why it's easy for a permanent secretary in government to fire workers or to threaten doctors to say, we will fire you, because when they get sick, they don't use UTH, See where their medical files are. They are in foreign countries, or private surgeries. They don't use public hospitals. Today a number of people in authority are sick, but they are not at Chilenje level 1 hospital, Yes, they are in these high-class private hospitals, using your tax, So when doctors go on strike, like I said, then your society is breaking down, you see, and the effect that this has is that it completely destroys the morale amongst professionals, because at the end of the day, some of these people are being treated by Zambian doctors in foreign countries, those that were chased by the Chiluba government. Chiluba did the same thing. He fired doctors. And what happened when they started getting sick? Where were they going? Outside the country. Morningside Clinic in South Africa. So it's a shame for a country once critical personnel start, demanding issues like a salary. Because that is your livelihood. Whether, people say, no, these people are lifesavers, but how are you going to save somebody's life if you are hungry? If you can't even afford, a shirt as a doctor, So when things are upside down, they manifest in issues like that, where people die unnecessarily, because doctors, were on go slow, and, others are dismissed, others are threatened, so it's that's it's our sickness. It's a national sickness which must be cured.
In the past, we've also seen that the police being used as tools of violence to carry out illegal orders before and during the elections. How can the police ensure that they do not overstep their boundaries? What would be your recommendation on that?
Well, the police, like I said, they work under orders. So the solution in stopping abuse of the police lies in stopping the abusers. Once you cut the heads of the abusers off, there will be no abuse. I'm not saying, go with a knife and literally cut everybody. No. But what I'm saying is that once you institute good governance, for example, in the Ministry of Home Affairs, then you are not going to have police being abused, because, for example, if you have a minister and a permanent secretary that understand, that these people are professionals and we must keep them, from the personal issues, political issues, then, it will trickle down. Leadership is a trickle-down effect. When you have a leader who supports cadarism, there will be cadarism on the streets. When you have a leader who supports anarchy, there will be anarchy on the streets. When you have a leader who supports abuse of the police, there will be abuse of police. I'll give you an example. Levi Mwanawasa refused people to go and dance for him at the airport. What did we see? We saw reduced levels of cadarism, and he made it clear that if you are in trouble, you are going to face the law as an individual. I'm not going to protect you because you belong to my party. We saw, So everything comes from leadership.
Interesting. But now that we're talking about the same issue of cadarism, we were hosting one of the members of the ruling party. According to their opinion, they were suggesting that they say in public facilities, councils, markets and bus stations, he was suggesting that councils are happy with the status quo. Based on your analysis and what you have checked through, is that the situation on the ground?
Councils being happy with the status quo, yet council workers go for months without pay. What is that? That is politicking. You know, that is politicking. You know, councils being happy when the entire city is a garbage city. And you say councils are happy, you know, then they must be revoked, you know, they must be removed from employment, so that people who understand what makes a council happy should take their place. You know, councils are not happy. You know, let's not put words in councils' mouths. You know, councils today are a disaster, my brother. I'm telling you this because I come from an era where a dustbin was always being dropped by Lusaka City Council. A dustbin, an aluminium dustbin, written LOCC, you know. It was on every home, you know. I grew up in Kabwata there. The people that grew up in Kabwata can tell you, you know, the council used to come and collect garbage. You know, all our parents were paying was rentals. You know, when, you know, as kids we broke a lot of windows, you just go to the National Housing Authority office, lodge in a report, you are not charged. They come and fix the window because they know it's an accident. Councils had surplus, you know. But today, they cannot, councils are failing to run themselves because the basic income generating activities have been hijacked, you know, have been politically hijacked. So you cannot say councils are happy.
Now, how can the majority of citizens position themselves for the 12 August elections in order to send a message to politicians that all Zambians have potential to contribute to development in a dignified way?
Positioning ourselves, comrade, is very essential, but very tricky in the sense that, you know, we are a poor society. And that is what we must be wary of, especially in this election time. People take advantage of our poverty at this time, you know. People take advantage of our hunger, you know. When you haven't had food for days, you know, and somebody comes to throw a bag of mealie meal, you know, at this time, you know, you are likely to fall prey, you know. When somebody waits for 5 years or 4.5 years, they wait to do your road and they come to do it, you know, a few months before an election, you know, you must be wary. You know, when issues, you know, there are a lot of these issues. Talk about empowerment, you know. After the Bush protest, we saw this empowerment being thrown there, this empowerment fund being thrown there. You know, what have they done now? You know, you know, talk of the Artist Empowerment Fund, for example. You know, how many artists can tell us, you know, what they've done with those funds or where they are? Perhaps Camnet should do this, you know, as a feature. Let's visit the artists that got the empowerment funds so that they tell us, you know. So, again, when you positioning ourselves as a society is very critical. And I would say, eat this empowerment, because this is the style of politicians. Believe me, whether they are in power or they are not, you know, this is the language. Bribery is the language of politicians. So they'll bribe you, you know, they'll give you false information, you know, they'll give you a wrong picture. You know, they'll use state media or whatever media, private media, to do a lot of propaganda, you know, for their interest. You know, so as citizens, ultimately we must be looking at the wholesome picture. In the last 5 years, you know, when did we last have an election? And up to now, you know, how has my life improved as a citizen? You know, how am I managing as a business person? What is the cost of doing business? You know, as a mother, you know, how am I managing to put food for the table for my children and grandchildren? You know, all these things are the things that we are supposed to sit within our confines, you know, and really analyze and look at the candidates that are there to say, what is he saying? You know, what is this going to benefit me as a citizen? Because ultimately, you know, we vote for people so that they improve our lives, you know, or they create an environment where we are going to be able to improve our own standards of living. A lot of people we are not begging government, you know, for alms. You know, that is why I talked about those empowerment funds. Citizens are not begging government for empowerment, no. What people want is a conducive environment, you know, where you are going to do your business freely, you know, where you don't need to corrupt anybody for you to get a government contract, you know, where you don't need to go behind some clinical officer for you to get a COVID test today, you know. So all these things are the things that are supposed to play in our minds as citizens as we position ourselves, because ultimately it's politicians that are supposed to position themselves around us, because now we are the boss. You know, you who has that NRC and your voter's card, you are the king now. You know, so don't ever think you are the servant because you have power to either, you know, continue the status quo or change the situation. You know, you have power to put in leaders who you feel will do the right thing for you, and or you have the power to maintain those that you feel are doing the right things for you.
But do you think citizens appreciate that responsibility, that they are actually the bosses and not the other way around? Have we reached that level where every citizen is able to appreciate and understand equally that their voter's card is key in as far as decision making is concerned on August 12?
Unfortunately, as a citizenry, we have not reached that level where we understand that our vote is more powerful than that disposable T-shirt from China. So that is why, you know, even the political culture, you know, they've taken advantage of our being docile, of our political docility, you know, of our simplicity, you know, as citizens, you know, because you've heard where people say, last time we voted for a song, you know. That's how simple we are as citizens politically, you know. I've gone on a campaign trail before, and believe me, it's so saddening to hear somebody say, inangatsi munaniletereko chili chonse sininga vote. You see?
How can we kill that culture? Because people take it as
we need first of all to start educating ourselves. We need to start educating our children, you know, because believe me, a certain generation of us is lost. You cannot teach old dogs new tricks. So we need to start a revolution where we start, you know, political education at a very, very early age for young people, so that they begin to appreciate civic education is the key, you know, to us being, you know, relevant in either the electoral process or just the developmental process in general. Without civic education, we are just passengers, you know. Without civic education, you know, we'll just be hearing at unga wadura, you know, without a say, you know. No, kadieni kandolo. Then, you know, we start looking for kandolo without a say, you know. So it's very important that civic education, the whole civic education syllabus must be reformed, you know, in our schools, especially at primary school. And that is why you see that in societies where indoctrination has started at a very early age. I'll give you an example. In Muslim societies, you know, the children are taught, you know, the laws of Islam from a very tender age, you know. So much so that at a certain age, you cannot convince that person otherwise. You know, so even politically, we need to begin to teach ourselves, you know, that is the only way we are going to appreciate that, you know, we have a stake in this society and in this country called Zambia. That is when we are going to have a say to say, even that copper that is in Kansanshi or whatever, Kantanshi or Konkola, I have a share there, you know. But as it is, like I said, politicians have used the poverty of the people to sort of sabotage the people's development, to exploit the people using, you know, the conditions that the people live in.
You are watching the Ask Election TV series, and that is an initiative that is brought to you by the Alliance for Community Action. We are discussing freedom of speech, assembly, association in the run-up to the 2021 elections, which is just a few weeks ahead. And my guest is Mr. MAIKO ZULU, who is also a musician and a human rights activist. We also want to get something, Mr. ZULU. I want to also find out. It is also said that the mantle of being advocates has been left to a few individuals. But how can we ensure that citizens, especially young people, get on board in advocating for development, especially in this election period?
You know, the mantle of activism has not been left to a few people. It's just that, you know, people that are supposed to carry that mantle have sold out. You know, I'll give you an example, and I know, you know, I may be called names after this, but look at the CSO world, you know. For me, my understanding of non-governmental organizations is that they are supposed, you know, to complement citizens in a certain way that government is not fulfilling, you know, and speaking or championing for the rights of the citizens should be the core agenda of these CSOs that are supposed to be championing for the rights, championing the rights of the citizens. But what have we seen? We have seen a division. There's two sides to the NGOs. There's those that are perceived as, you know, pro-government, you know, and those that are perceived as being not, you know. But I'm glad to say, you know, that there are, of course, notable CSOs that have stood the test of time, you know. Alliance for Community Action is one of them, you know, who have, you know, who are towing a certain kind of path, you know, that is neither belonging to the opposition. It doesn't belong to the politics of the day. you know. And that is important because CSOs have a huge role to play, like I said. So if we have CSOs speaking two different languages, first of all, you bring in now, you dilute the whole purpose of why these CSOs are created in the first place. Then, secondly, very, very important also, and I've said this in other fora before, CSOs are limited in the way that they can engage, you know. For example, if an NGO receives money from a country that supports certain agendas, you know, it may be very difficult, you know. Yes, they may want to do certain things, you know, but it may be very difficult to actualize those things because they are tied, you know. So, the funding aspect, you know, it has also killed activism. You know, so that is why it's very, very important that those CSOs that tend to support general citizens are supported also. You know, because ultimately, like I said, activism should be bigger than organizations. You know, you, if you are hungry, Comrade Soko, you know, it shouldn't be up to a CSO to stand up and say, oh no, Mr. Soko, Slamadia. You see, first of all, it has to be you. And that is why citizen power, people power, is very, very important. You know, and as we head towards elections, it's very important that citizens understand that when you go into that booth, you know, it's you and you alone. You know, you are not going to go with your mother, your father, you know, except for those of our citizens who may be differently abled, they are being assisted. But ultimately, even them, the decision is theirs. You know, so ultimately, the most important factor, the most important element, you know, in this election is you, the voter. It is you, the viewer, who is watching right now. You know, because ultimately it is your decision that is going to make or break this country. It is our decision as voters, you know, that has brought us here, you know, because we voted leaders, you know, who have moved the country from where it was at that time up to where it is now. So it is us. If there is development that has been witnessed, it is us who are responsible. If there are failures that have been, you know, witnessed, it's us, citizens. So ultimately, you know, it's the citizen that comes first, the individual citizen. You know, so once activism begins to filter from the organizational point of view, it filters to citizens. Then you will see, you know, that even these CSOs that are genuine will be complemented. You know, it will be easier, you know, for them to advance their causes.
But how can we ensure that our duty bearers or lawmakers take steps to prosecute or punish officials who committed abuse, allowing impunity to remain a problem in the country?
The best thing we can do, if they are votable, let's vote them out. You know, obviously that is a bigger solution. But again, practically speaking, you know, again, we need to create these avenues in which people speak. You know, you rightly put it in your preamble to say democratic space is shrinking. It has been shrinking. So it's important that within the situation that we are in, we grow certain seeds that should germinate, so those, it could be, like I said, within your community structures, your church, your women's movements, your women's groupings, your youth movements, this is, like I said in the beginning, where the discussion must be, because ultimately, as citizens, by the time we reach an election, months before you reach an election, you should have already made up your mind, so much so that within the campaign period, whatever happens is just a formality, That is why there are certain people who won elections without even campaigning. How many months did President Lungu, for example, campaign? Because at that time, people wanted him. Okay, people just, he came out from nowhere, despite the propaganda and stuff like that, so he never really campaigned, so it's the people that made that choice. So ultimately, in any situation, like I said, people power, it must be the focal point of every discussion, because without the people, it's like you are going to discuss, or you gather people in a stadium to say, let's go and watch football. You bring the teams, you bring Zambia and you bring the Netherlands, for a rematch, and you don't bring the football. You can imagine now the chaos after people have paid into Heroes Stadium and there's no football, just that small round thing. So in this case, that football is you, the citizen. Without you, the match won't kick off. The referee and the players, the crowd might as well go home. So citizens' participation should be, encouraged. It should be supported. Those that are able to support, let them support, forms of citizens' participation, because ultimately it's all about the citizens. People go into office on the platform that they want to do something for the citizen. They want to change the lives of the citizens, so, and who are the citizens? It is you and I, So ultimately, that is where the focus must be.
Mr. Zulu, as we wind up our discussion, I want to get your perspective. Moving forward, how can we heal the country from the rampant corruption, abuse of power, the country that has faced in recent years?
Corruption will only be stopped in Zambia if leaders start going to jail for stealing public money. It's as simple as that, comrade. And there's no diplomatic way to put it. Don't let them tell you that, oh no, because when you see their reports, these monies, so billions, it was due to delayed banking. They'll give theft a jacket and tie. They'll name it something else so that you don't call them thieves. Let us call each one out for what they are. And if money is missing, government money is missing, it means you have thieves in government. And these are individuals, they are human beings that you can trace. So let's not go around and say, no, corruption. Right now, even the corruption perception index, I think it's the lowest. The only time, like again, when the corruption perception index was at its peak, I think it was when, I don't know, I think it's Manawasa's era, you know. Of course, I think SATA tried a bit in the first couple of years, but, you know, we are known for corruption now. In those days, you know, when you hear corruption, you wouldn't relate it to a country like ours, you know. But now, you know, what are we seeing? And those are figures that are there, you know. I talked about the FIC report. You can cite the Auditor General's report. What is it telling us? It's telling us that there are thieves in government. So as citizens, we cannot sit idle. Because when you buy that water in ShopRite, you are paying tax. And now they're even selling you a carrier bag. What is that? That is tax. And that is the money that we see is being misappropriated. That is the money that should be going to public services today. That is the money that is causing people to be sent to private hospitals, private pharmacies, to go and get Panadol. You know, that is that money. And it is being stolen. So for me, let's not, you know, call thieves honorable. No. You see? And this is what we are doing, you know. We have people who have abused government offices and we are still there calling them honorable. No, these are dishonorable men and women and they must be called out for that. They must be traced and sent to jail. You know, if people are not getting punished, corruption will always be there, you know. And unfortunately, you and I, even if we had the evidence, you know, we don't even have, you know, that power, you know, to get these cases prosecuted. And that is why some of them have the audacity to say, bring evidence, show evidence, you know. The evidence is there in the FIC report. That is a government paper. It's there in the Auditor General's report. That is a government paper. So what more do we want?
Interesting. Mr. Zulu would like to thank you for finding time to be part of the program.
Thank you so much and have a blessed day.
Thank you. Well, we've come to the end of the program. We've been discussing freedom of association, freedom of speech, as well as in the build-up to the elections. We've tackled a number of issues pertaining to local current affairs that have happened in as far as this subject is concerned, where we have seen people's freedom of speech and assembly and association being curtailed by authorities. Now, we'll be coming back with another episode of this program next week, Friday. And we'd like to wish you a continued viewing on Akamne TV. Remember, as we wind up, we just go through a quote by Narendra Modi, which states that mere good governance is not enough. It has to be pro-people and proactive. Good governance is putting people at the center of the development process. This has been Patrick Soko. Stay tuned to Akamne TV, and the main news is next at 19:30. Stay tuned.